another broadcast of Timeless Esoterica on the Artist First Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up in podcast form at artistfirst.com. And now, out to your hosts. It's Lucinda Laughing Eagle and the paranormal professor himself, Dr. Bruce.
Hey, well, thank you, Z-Man, our producer and station manager and jack of all trades there in Ohio. And welcome to everybody. And also I'd like to thank Jordan Martin, who's doing the simulcast for us on YouTube Live. And he's doing all the technical wizardry. And we have a very exciting guest tonight. And those of you that are on YouTube Live, you can see us maybe for the first time. So I hope you get over the shock of seeing me for the first time, and you get to see our special guest and my lovely co-host, Lucinda. So, yeah, welcome to another edition of Timeless Esoterica. You can tell it's different. You know, we got a video now, and so we're getting more and more sophisticated as we go, at least in our technology. So, Lucinda, I would like you to tell me tell us about our guest tonight. You have a connection to Kevin. I'm just meeting Kevin for the first time. So if you could let us know what you do such great introductions for the guests. So you should do it.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my dear friend, Kevin Briggs. We met last summer on the Pine Ridge Reservation. He was one of the speakers at the Consciousness and Contactees Conference. And he is an experiencer and has the funny thing is Kevin has a very similar story to Bruce. And so this is my little scheme to get you guys in a little virtual room together. Actually have a lot in common. And so I'm just kind of putting you guys in the same room and I'm gonna fuel the fire a little bit and probably get conversations going, but I kind of want to see you two kind of bounce off each other. So,
wow. Okay.
Very much like Bruce, Kevin is an ET experiencer and basically has what would you call them, Kevin? He's got a set of guides and one very particular guide that's been with him forever. And basically it's his Anzar. And since we all have kind of experiences with a guide of some sort, I'm not ready to say ET. So that's something I'm going to bug you guys about too. I want to know how the delineation between the different energies. And that's something I'm always curious about, is how different people perceive these energies. I know how I do it, but I like to hear how other people do it.
Cool.
So I'll ask the Bruce question because I know this happens all the time. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about your history.
Hi, Lucinda. Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
Thank you very much for inviting me on your show. I do appreciate it. I've been speaking out now for a couple of years about my experiences, and I'm surprised at the interest. So thanks again for inviting me on your show. I think my journey started when I was 8 years old. I was taking a bath at home, and I was always sensitive to other vibrations and frequencies as a child, and there was a change in the vibrational frequency within the bathroom, and also a slight change in temperature, which I was able to pick up on. Two beings appeared in the bathroom, slightly elevated off the floor, both very attractive, one male, one female, long blonde hair, both of them, down to the shoulders, deep blue eyes, very attractive male and female, and wearing a tight-fitting blue jumpsuit. And they were speaking telepathically to one another, and I could understand them. It frightened me to death as an 8-year-old. And they were speaking about me, not to me. And I remember some of the conversation, and I remember I now know these two beings I've been in contact with them all my life, and I'm now 66. Their names are Ort and Dee. And Dee questioned Ort and said, "Is this the boy?" And Ort replied saying, "Yes, this is the boy." She then questioned him and said, "Are you sure this is the boy?" He says, "Yes, I'm sure this is the boy." And then she went on and questioned again and said, "Well, look at him. He's small, he's uneducated, he's frightened by our presence." And she was correct, I was. And he said, "No, this is a boy. I will guide him. I will teach him." I was so frightened. She was correct. There was some other conversation in that I don't recall. I was so frightened. They disappeared. I stayed in the bath. I dare not get out of the bath. The water went cold. I was shivering. My mother came into the bathroom to see why I was still in the bath and the water was cold. And I told her about the two beings, and she said it was just my imagination. It wasn't. I was dried off and went on with the evening. And now I've been in contact with these two beings all my life, and they've introduced me to other beings as well. So that's how I started at the age of 8, and I'm now 66.
Now, I mean, that is a really cool story, and there's a lot of questions that'll come from that. Now, obviously, you're from Texas originally. I'm just kidding.
Alabama.
Alabama. No, so tell us where you're from. And
I'm from the UK, and obviously I worked over there. I left school and worked at the University of Leeds as a technician. In a lab there, and I did that for about 11 years, and then I joined the police force in the UK, and I was a police officer for 20 years. And then when I retired from the police force, my wife wanted to come over to the United States, so we went through the immigration system, started a small business, and I've been selling real estate here in Florida for 20 years. So 3 stages to my different careers, and I've learned so much from all of them. So, and now I'm moving on to being an author and speaking, and it's just never ending. It just continues to move on. So I'm very happy, very grateful, very privileged, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you. It's interesting. Well, Lucinda, this is really great that you kind of surprised me with how you set this up, and the fact that Kevin, I was a correctional officer. So we have that in common as well. You know, I do have an alien contact and a couple of spirit guides and so forth. But and she mentioned the name of mine, Anzar. Yeah, I just think that's interesting that we were both in law enforcement, ended up in law enforcement.
Yes, that's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, Lucinda, go ahead with your devious plan you had tonight.
This is because where my mind is going right now, in terms of putting different things together, experiences, and talking to other people about their contacts and kind of where we get our information from. And it just so happened somebody had sent me today a YouTube video with Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about when he was doing kind of these facilitating these going right now meditations, that he would see these tall beings in the room. And I know that Anzar is very tall. I know that I've encountered these very tall beings. I call them the Sentinels. I don't know where that comes from. They're like soldiers to me, but well, guardians, I'll say. I won't say soldiers. They're not taking orders from. If they're soldiers, they're way up there. But it got me thinking about Anzar, and it got me thinking about Kevin's guides and mine and that kind of thing. And that's why I was asking Kevin, like, how do you really know they're ET? And that's going to be my first question for my little mini panel of 2.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin. Yeah.
Why do we say ET? As in, we need to define it. Let's define it.
Okay, that's a very good question. I can probably only answer it by the information that I've received from ETs, higher conscious beings, whatever label you like to put on them. But I was told that Ort and Dee are Arcturian, they are fifth dimensional beings, and they are from Andromeda. They tell me that I'm part of their extended family, only I live here in the third dimension, while they live in the fifth dimension. I have learnt over the years that we are multidimensional beings, but they've taught me and guided me where I have many of the abilities that they have. So with that question that you've given me, I will have to question possibly my understanding of who they are. But I was also introduced to a group of 8, including Ort and D. And within that group, there's a couple of greys, there's a manta, there's a tall white. So again, I would have to think about that. And why do I think they are extraterrestrials? Perhaps I may need to amend my understanding of them. And I do use the term higher conscious beings because I'm aware that they do exist at these higher levels. And one of them, the leader of this particular group of 8, his name is Ra. He's Anunnaki. He's a watcher. And his energy is huge when he will speak to me, or through me sometimes. And tells me he's a 9th dimensional being. So I'm not certain whether perhaps I will have to continue just to call them higher conscious beings and take the ET concept away from that. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to think about that more, Lucinda.
Yeah, I'm curious about it because, okay, so follow-up question. When did they divulge to you like where they're from, and when you got this nomenclature of location of Arcturian and kind of these navigational points of reference, did you know what that meant when you got that information, or did you get it and then learn it?
Yes, I did. I got that later on when I started questioning the information. And I'm very new to this, Lucinda. I've only been speaking out for 2 years. And the reason why I did that, although I've had a lifelong contact, the only reason why I did that, one evening I got out of bed to go to the bathroom. And I came back into the bedroom, and there's a bright light outside the bedroom window. The light came into the bedroom, and the bedroom lit up like a myriad of butterflies, but it was just pure white light. And then Orton D materialized at the bottom of the bed. I'm used to seeing them, interacting with them, as I say, all my life. After pleasantries, I asked them what was the reason for their visit. They said they wanted me to talk about my lifelong interactions with them. They wanted me to write about my lifelong interactions with them. They said, in fact, you will write 2 books. And I said to them, I don't mind talking about my interactions with you, but I'm not a writer. And they said, we will continue to guide you, we will continue to teach you, and we will give you some information to include in the book, which they did. So then I'm asking more and more questions over the next few years, and there's more and more information coming in to me. And by accident, I channeled Ort, and that was the next stage of their teachings and guiding of me, I'm sure. So, and I'd say I wouldn't have spoken out about any of this if they had not have asked me to do so. So a lot of the information has come much later on because although I've asked for information from a child, and I know when I was 9 years old, pure conscious energy came into my home, and it stayed there for a week. And when he left, there was no direct contact at that time, but I was able to separate my conscious energy from my physical, and that allowed me to go and travel anywhere I wanted as pure conscious energy. And at that time, as a child, 9 years old, I would just use it to go and visit my grandparents on a Sunday, and use it for just simple travel. And I often wondered what my grandparents would see if they came upstairs while I was in the house, just pure conscious energy, and they would have seen, slightly vibrating. That would have been my pure conscious energy orb. And I fully understand that now. And it can be used for much more than just traveling 70 miles to see your grandparents. They've taught me about consciousness, how it can be used for communication, for travel, for co-creation itself. So quite a lot over the years. But as I say, I wouldn't have spoken about it, but I do now willingly, and I'm meeting so many other experiences. Look at Bruce. I've met Bruce today, and it's just amazing how we all have very similar stories, very similar interactions with spirit guides, ETs, higher conscious beings, the angelic realm, all these different vibrational frequencies. So it's fascinating, and I'm still continuing to learn as I move forward. So it's a fascinating time for me.
That's my whole point, is that we've all, I mean your story parallels mine a lot, and that's why from the childhood experiences to having knowledge that is later confirmed, things that you hear them saying and you think is made up, but then you find out it's real, kind of thing. And to that thing of, I don't want to tell people and like, oh no, it's time, when it's all very guided. What can you add, Bruce? Do you concur? You've had similar parallels, right?
Yeah. Well, what prompted me to speak out and write about it. I mean, I've been writing. I've written a lot of books, but all of them have been pretty standard political science and history. Being a historian, professor of history, I didn't feel like I should write about all my experiences I've had since I was 4 years old, because I felt like I would be, they would get rid of me. I'd lose my job, and I think that would be true in law enforcement too. If you started talking about that's a pretty, a kind of place where you're not going to be well received, or at least you wouldn't think so anyway. So it was in 2016 that my friend Gene died, a childhood friend, and he came to me in a vision and spoke to me. And this was not unusual, because I've spoken to dead people before. I just never told anybody I did, except for my mother, because she was very psychic. But and even so, it was more of a hushed kind of thing. But he came to me in a vision and said, it's time for me to tell my stories, and he even gave me the title of the book, which was Timeless, and now I've written 3 of them. It's a trilogy, and it started off just like that. So then I started to piece things together, and through both conscious memories and through hypnotic regression with Yvonne Smith. And I figured out that I've been in contact with these, if we want to call them non-human intelligences, or you call them ETs, whatever, since at least age 6 that I can remember, strange experiences. And the recent experience with who I call Anzar, I call him an ancient alien mystic. And when I first met him in 1997, also in a vision, he told me, he didn't tell me his name then, he just told me he was the progenitor, which says a lot. That's why I call him an ancient alien mystic, that he was one of the first contacts here on Earth. That was the whole idea. And he spoke in a very Zen-like way. And since that time, I kind of tucked it away. I tried to talk once to my colleague about the progenitor, and she kind of looked at me like I was crazy and said, "You're pretty spacey." And so I said, "Okay, I even drew a picture of him, showed it to her." She was an anthropologist, so I thought she'd be interested. But she just kind of shunned me, and I said, "Okay, I'm not going to bring this up again. That's ridiculous. I'm going to get fired or something." And so it wasn't until after Gene died and I had that vision that I had the courage really to step forward and out myself as an experiencer and as a person who sees ghosts and talks to spirits and all that. And then I just went all in, radio show, teaching a paranormal class. But this thing about Anzar and the concept of who he really is, he calls himself the progenitor. He says that he's the original contact here on Earth. it's all very difficult for a lot of people to believe. It's difficult for me to believe sometimes, but I'm actually having these conversations when I have these regular spirit walks. And that's the question I'm going to ask Kevin, is how does he initiate the contact? Other than just like, it's not just random. Well, for me, it used to be random, but now it's not. But so I'm really interested in how you initiate the contact. But he has on a regular basis has given me very, very good information, and I count on that information. But who he really is, this is a question that Lucinda asked me. And his answer to me was that we are connected, and that an aspect of him is an aspect of me, which is interesting. That's really interesting. Like, am I, in your lineage? Does that mean I'm alien too? And the answer was, we are the aliens. That was the answer I got. We are the aliens. So we're all connected, which makes sense. Somebody must have seeded somebody somewhere, right? So this is this continuing contact that I have. But so when I initiate the contact, I go on what I call spirit walks, Kevin. I can't sit still and go into meditation, so I walk. And I can really easily get into a meditative state. And I have a special place I walk where it's just the connection is easier, if that makes sense. You probably know what I mean. And Lucinda, you know what I mean. It's just the veil is thinner, whatever you want to call it. And I initiate the contact. I have protection. I ask for protection from my spirit guides, who are different entities. One's very angelic, and the other's kind of a Native American type, actually. And then I ask to speak to Anzar, and he speaks to me. And the thing I do is I record it on my phone. I don't hear his voice. I hear it in my head. And I say what he says, and then I record it, because I didn't do that at first, and then I had trouble remembering what they told me. Yeah. And I thought, that's a waste. Why am I going out there and he's telling me all these great things, and then I don't remember half of it? That's a waste. So I started recording. I say everything he says, and he has quite a devilish sense of humor sometimes too, which is great. But I guess the question I have for you, and I hope I answered the question, listen, that was a very long answer to your question, but hopefully I did. But and I think there's points of connection here. And what I'd like to know from Kevin is, how do you initiate the contact with these beings?
Okay, well, there are many different modalities of contact that they've used over the years, and some of them, they'll include dreams, telepathic communication, downloads, craft appearing. Even had a craft recently appear under a rainbow that my wife took a photograph of. OBEs, I'm able to travel outside of my body at will. Consciousness itself, which I think we've already covered, is the main conduit for communication, and obviously the physical materialization of them. And then channeling, which is a recent acquisition I might add. So how I initiate contact, I just relax. I open my mind and I ask to speak with them, and they all speak back using telepathic communications. Sometimes, I know when I was first learning telepathic communications, I would ask them to confirm the information. I know I got a download on the quantum unified field theory, which I knew nothing about. They explained the 4 interactions that our scientists understand, but said there was a 5th interaction, which is consciousness. And if your scientists include that 5th interaction, then they'll have a better understanding of their own quantum unified field theory. So while I'm sat on my pool deck getting that information, I said to them, you've just given me all this information. I need to know that the information is coming from you and it's not my own imagination. So can you show me a craft? And a craft appeared immediately. I went inside to get my wife. I said, Sandy, come outside. There's a craft appeared. And I'm thinking, I hope it's still there when we go outside. It was still there. We went outside. We went outside the pool deck. A second one appeared, a third one, a fourth one, 7 in total. They flew silently over our heads. They moved off at an angle of 80 degrees and disappeared sequentially as they had appeared. So that would be just simple initiation. Okay, they gave me the download, but I've learned over the years to ask for confirmation of information that I've received. And in that way, and they've also taught me, they don't give me, they don't sit me down in a classroom and talk to me. They give me an experience, and that experience is the lesson. So I have all these different modalities of contact I'm able to use. I had another download about the theory of everything. And again, nothing, I'm not into that type of science, as it were, but I asked them to confirm that information that they gave me in relation to that. They said there was a measurement problem within the calculations. And so I said, you just give me all this information about the theory of everything, and can you show me a craft just to confirm it's not my own imagination and you're giving me the information. On that occasion, one craft appeared, it flashed once, twice, 3 times, and then disappeared. So that was confirmation again. But over the years, I've learnt to use all these modalities of contact myself. I will sometimes go to bed of an evening, open, relax my mind, and ask for information, and it will come to me in a dream. I use telepathic communication all the time. But again, I will ask for confirmation. I know I think last year, it was February the 1st, they woke me up at 1:11 a.m. and gave me some information about people they wanted to contact. And I walked into my bathroom, I repeated the information, and it was the middle of the night. And I said, if that information you've given me telepathically is correct, can you turn that street light off directly opposite my home? And the street light went out immediately. So I had confirmation there. And on that particular occasion, there was some more information. They woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning, jumping on my bed twice. I thought it was a dog. So I've got a physical contact there, although I couldn't see them on that occasion. They gave me the second part of this message. And then I walked into my bathroom, but it was daylight now. The street lights were off. I repeated the message back to them, and I said, if this message is correct, can you turn the street light on immediately? And the street light came on immediately. So that gives you confirmation of the telepathic communication. And they've done that several times with several different contacts that way, that I'm very confident now with telepathic communication. And I do believe we all have these abilities. We're just not taught how to use them. And, and in fact, listening to you, Bruce, you mirror my own experiences. I used to speak to, I still do, speak to deceased members of my family, and I have done since a childhood. I speak to deceased friends of mine, friends who have passed. And on occasion, they'll ask me to convey a message, and I do that, although that's not my main task. My main task here is to assist with what they call the reveal, expanding our knowledge and understanding of who we are as a species. And I'm probably coming to that conclusion. I have many of the abilities that they have, but they've just taught me how to use them. And I think we as a human species have all those abilities. We just need to learn how to use them.
Okay, so let's move to the chicken and egg question, which is, do we have these abilities because we've had contact with them since childhood, or do we see them because we have these abilities when everyone can? Do you get my chicken versus my chicken egg? Is it a proximity thing? Are we able to do what we can do now because we were in proximity to them in early childhood, or is this something we've always been able to do, and that's the reason why we see them? And anybody.
That's a good question, and I have an answer. But I want to hear Kevin's answer to that.
Okay.
Well, perhaps you're probably quite right there in respect of, I know I had contact with them from 8, 9, 14, and then I got to 16, and I'm trying to find other people that have these abilities, psychic abilities, speaking to deceased family members, traveling outside of your body, and I couldn't find anybody anywhere. So one evening I decided to relax. I opened my hand, I held my hand out, and asked Ort. I said, I know there's a lot more to who we are. I would like some more information. Can you continue to assist and guide me? So I asked for information, and then he came, And then we traveled outside of the body together. We traveled all over, and he showed me many wondrous things. So I think possibly the inquiring open mind, I wasn't able to find anybody, but I do believe that I think I've found now the more and more experiences that you mix with, our DNA seems to get turned on in some respect. And I think because I was asking for information, they're like keynotes to turn on the DNA. So our abilities, and like any abilities, the more you practice them, or any skill, the better you become at them. And even, you know, to the point of we've mentioned telepathic communication. If you speak about that to most people, they will probably say you're just delusional and it's your own imagination. Well, I know it's not, because I've questioned it time and time again and confirmed it. And I still confirm it to this day. If I'm given information, I always ask for some different confirmations, so it's not always the same one. So I don't know if that will answer your question or not, Lucinda. It's a very complicated subject to talk about, really, because we don't have the words to describe how we do this.
No, I mean, we're kind of, I feel like we're writing the book on this ourselves, kind of thing, even though these are not new questions that we're asking, or that I'm asking. I'm not asking anything new. I'm just trying to get as many perspectives and opinions as I can. Okay, so Bruce, go ahead, and now it's your turn to answer.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to add to what Kevin explained very well. I think there are physiological changes and perhaps even genetic changes that take place on contact. And I think there's also a history, you know, there's a heredity as well, that this gets passed down from generation to generation. It's no surprise that in the ancient world that, you know, a medicine man in a tribe would beget another medicine man, and so forth and so on, you know, or that healers would have children that are also healers, some of them, you know, that type of thing. So I think there are predilections, you know, there's a hereditary aspect that probably make it easier. But I think with or without that, I think if you have the contact, it does make a forever change in a person. And I'd say that my first experience, paranormal experience at age 4, which was an angelic experience, opened the doors of perception that have never shut ever since. And the only difference between me then and me now is that I now have learned how to, I never say control them, but I say somewhat manage them, instead of just random events, you know, where I hear voices of dead people or something. Now I can know when to turn it off and when to turn it on, which is very helpful. And it is difficult to grow up with that. And I mean, my mom was psychic, so that, you know, I know I could talk to her, but my dad didn't believe in any of that. So he was very skeptical of all of that. So, but anyway, to answer the question, I think it's physiological and it's hereditary, but I think any contact is going to cause, with these entities, alien entities, whatever you want to call them, is going to make it easier to have more contact and more things happen. And it just continues to happen. I think one person said it's like you become a lightning rod for this. And I think it was Whitley Strieber who said that alien entities, or the visitors as he calls them, can identify people who've already been experienced because they glow. And they can see that. That's real easy for them to spot you out of a crowd. You know, there you are, you're glowing. They go, okay, this guy's, you know, this man or woman has already had the experience, so that's going to be an easier person. I think spirits are that way too. You know, I know, Lucinda, we've talked about it, but I haven't talked, this is the first time I met Kevin, but my theory is that the alien world, the spirit world, and the quantum world are all the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with the same thing. So that's why when I talk to my deceased friend Gene and I talk to Anzar, I'm talking to them at the same time. They're together. I see them together. Now, whether they're actually in that, I don't know if it's actually in the same space, but they seem to be in the same space to me, where I see them and I communicate with them, and they seem to sometimes interact with each other, which is rather interesting to me. So, and anyway, that's my answer to that. And I mean, there's so many different directions to go here with this experience. Obviously, you know, Kevin, now that we've connected, I want to keep a correspondence going with you, because I'm glad that Lucinda got us together.
Oh, of course, without a doubt, Bruce. It's fascinating to always meet people with very similar abilities, very similar history, as it were. And we have so much in common, and then we can speak about it openly because we have those experiences. As a child, I tried to find other people like me, and I couldn't. I didn't speak to my, only on that one occasion did I speak to my mother. I didn't speak to her about it after that. My father died when I was 9. So I just kept the information to myself and just kept asking Orton D for more information. They were my guides and teachers. And I was very comfortable with it, very happy with it, very happy with the abilities, and always wanted to learn more. And I think that's why I've got to this position. But I think we all have these abilities if we just open up our minds to accessing it, really. And in fact, I've got a friend of mine who I worked with. He was a detective for many years, and he been a skeptic all his life. And I remember, I think it was last year, he comes over on vacation with his wife, and we were sat on the pool deck with my wife, Sandy, and his wife. And I asked him if he wanted a beer, and that was a silly question. Of course, he said yes. I went to the refrigerator to get a couple of beers. I came back. As I reached in to get the 2 beers, I said to my ET guides, telepathically, now would be a good time to show him a craft. I came back, 2 beers. I put the beers down on the table. I sat down, and as soon as I sat down, a craft appeared. It shot along the back of our garden 3 times in quick succession, and then went straight up into space at a very fast speed. And his face, it was just tremendous. He didn't believe what he was seeing. He looked, but all 4 of us saw it, and it changed his whole perspective from being a skeptic all his life. And that then opened up. He was over again, and he took a photograph of a full moon, blood red moon, I think it was. And on the photograph were 5 or 6 orbs, huge orbs. And then he had an out-of-body experience. And this is a guy, it's just like a little key opening the door, lets the crack of the light in. And now he phones me up, and he'll send me things about UFOs and ET. He's a total skeptic. He's now interested in the subject. So quite fascinating, really.
I had another question, Lucinda, if I could ask Kevin about, it sounds to me like when some of these, and Lucinda and I have had this discussion about integration with these entities, right? And that's something that I know it's something people shouldn't take lightly. I mean, you know, if you're an autonomous being integrating with somebody, you better be darn well sure that that's a benevolent being, a helpful being. Now, you mentioned what I would call physical mediumship, where you channel them, they speak through you. Now, when you say that, do they inhabit who you are and you speak as them? I mean, your voice, does your voice sound different? I mean, that's because I've always been afraid to do full-on physical mediumship, and maybe that's a limitation for me. And maybe I should think about that, but I want to know your experience, what you call that, what some people would call, I think that's right, Lucinda, full physical mediumship, isn't that what?
Or channeling.
Channeling, yeah. So
channeling.
Okay, yes, they explain it to me as dual conscious physical communication.
Okay.
And what particularly happens in that is I'm able, as I told you earlier, that to separate or move my consciousness to one side. So I do that. I'm still there, but I've just left my body a little bit. I allow them to come in and use my physical, using their consciousness. Now, I fell into that accidentally. I had no intention of doing it. I wasn't particularly interested in channeling. And we had a group of friends around, the 3 of us, and 4 of us in total, and my wife, and we did a meditation. And Melanie said to me, did you receive any information, Kevin? Did anything come through to you? I said, oh, no. She said, are you sure? I said, yeah. No, nothing at all. I said, except there's a male stood next to me. I can feel his energy. She said, well, who is it? I said, I don't know. She said, well, ask him. So I asked him, and it was Art. And when I asked him, who is it, he then spoke through me. He introduced himself to the group, and he spoke for about 40 minutes. And
Wow.
I don't remember any of the conversation at all. When he left, I was physically drained. And then what we used to meet once a month, and I would channel, and I became quite competent at it. But what we did on one occasion, we measured the air temperature in the room, and it was actually 77 degrees. When I channel, immediately around my body, the air temperature it went up 10 degrees, so it's 87 degrees. So the energy that they're using is conscious energy for the communication. And I'm quite comfortable with it now, where I don't get drained. And we recorded them all and wrote them all down. A lot of information in there in relation to what they're here for. They're here to assist us and help us grow and evolve. And so, yeah, it's fascinating really to do that. And it's but you are correct, Bruce. I would say you have to protect yourself, because there are other entities that will try and use you if they want to. So you have to be aware of the different vibrational frequencies. You have to ask them for protection, which I do. And if you're aware of that, you cannot just go into this blindly, because there are areas that we still don't fully understand, I'm sure. And I have heard of others. I know a friend of mine, Kathy Marden, she an entity attached herself, and she's a lifelong experiencer, and she had difficulty in shaking this entity off, and she asked for my assistance with the group of 8, and we were able to assist her. And in fact, she mentioned it in her new book. I have it here, Extraterrestrial Contact. And,
I have that book. Yeah.
It's a fascinating book, but she put that story in the book. And then a friend of mine, I've obviously read the book as well, and she said, Kevin, do you know what page you're on in the book? I said, no. She says, it's 222. I said, oh, that's a coincidence. I wonder why that is, because that's a universal connection number, if you believe in synchronicity and things like that. So I asked Kathy if she'd put me on page 222 on purpose. She said no, she just sent the information to the publisher, and I came out on page 222. But again, that's really bringing people together as experiences, and we're all having very similar contact, and many of us are actually being spoken to now by the same groups of ETs, higher conscious beings, angelic realms, whatever label you want to put on there. So it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I think that we've all been connected. That's the beauty of it, and that gives you the confidence to speak out. I'm confident speaking out about it anyway, because I think it's important information now that we all share. I don't think any one individual is important. We are just one small piece of a jigsaw, but we're helping people, like my friend who was a total skeptic. Now it's opened up his mind to other possibilities. So that in itself is, I think that's why we're being asked to speak out about it. And people like yourself, Bruce, and myself, we have got some of the other extra abilities, and we're comfortable with, we've had them all our lives, so we're comfortable with them. And now we're comfortable talking about them because there are more and more people. I have experiences call me all the time, wanting to share their stories. They haven't spoken to other people.
Yeah.
I'm speaking out publicly, as you are, Bruce, as others are, as Lucinda does. You know, we all have these abilities. So exciting times ahead, I think.
I just want to mention this, and I don't know if you've noticed it, Lucinda, but during this interview or this discussion, really a chat, it's not an interview, we're very informal here, but that makes it more fun, I think, because we can go in whatever direction we want. The lights in my house are doing funny things. It's kind of, is anything going on over there, Lucinda, in your house?
I'm only muting because my cat's trying to come into the bedroom, and there's a lot of little like scratching at the door. There's a lot of this. No, but, no, there's a little bit of light stuff. It's just a little.
Well, yeah, I'm feeling very energized, and so anyway, the lights were doing some funny things there. So that's interesting. I'm after our chat tonight I'm going to go out and see what I see outside. I think I'm going to see something. And that's only happened a few times with me. I asked Anzar, I said, I'd really like my son, my youngest son, and who lives with us, and my wife, Ginger, I'd like them to see a UFO, UFO. And I'm always told, okay, we'll try, we'll do it if we can. And a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, I guess, I went outside like I do every night and looked and just, do a little communing with the universe. And sure enough, there was a UFO going by. So I went and got both of them. They both came out and saw it. And my son Leif has already seen a UFO together with me before, but Ginger has never seen one. So I thought, okay, now this is an experience, now she can, know that I'm not just making stuff up or whatever. I don't think she does think I'm making stuff up, but, it's different when you experience it yourself. She believes me, but, when seeing it is the experience is what causes the belief to be set in, and causes more experience. But so she saw it. And but it wasn't. It was strange enough. It was as big and bright as Venus, but it was traveling from south, and it wasn't a satellite. It was traveling from southwest to northeast in the sky. And anyway, so she she has that experience, and then she's had some lights in our room and a butterfly-looking thing in the corner. So she's had some experiences, which I've been asking Anzar, could you help her see some things? So it's been going on, but I haven't been pressing it. I haven't been, I would really like to I like this idea of the confirmation. I don't think it's bad to ask for confirmation, because I think that's okay. At first I thought I was imposing, like I thought they're so busy. And then but then when you think about it, they're in, this ultimate consciousness in this realm where they have no sense of time anyway, like we have this artificial time that we're driven by, like our show is supposed to end now, somehow. But anyway, so anyway, that's, I'm glad that we've got to meet, Kevin, because I think I'm not going to be afraid to ask for those confirmations. I'm not going to be, I'm going to be more, because I know Anzar is a benevolent being. I've been talking to him for a couple of years now directly on a regular basis. I think that having the more physical relationship integration that Lucinda and I talked about before, I can take the next step, I think. Anyway, that's just that. So I think that's something that I've learned from you. Oh. And Lucinda, Lucinda has helped me understand this, and now Kevin, you've reinforced that. So I think that's really important. And I'm not sure if we have to end it, if we can go longer or not.
Bruce, you can take as much time as you want.
Oh, okay. So let's go a little bit longer, if that's okay, Kevin. You're in you're 3 hours.
You mentioned. Where you are. It's, what time is it here now? It's midnight here now where I'm in Florida.
Yeah. Okay. So we're both in.
I'm very comfortable. So.
Yeah. So
you mentioned your family being involved. It's quite interesting. Over the past few years, they've involved my wife. They've made direct contact with her. One of them being Zark. He's a small grey, and he has a sense of humour. And he moves my wife's personal things around the home, much to her dismay. She'll do a table setting, turn away from the table, and he'll take the knife and fork off the setting and move it to one side. Or she'll go and pull a blind on because the sun's shining in her eyes as she's cooking, and she'll go and pull the blind on, turn around back to the kitchen, and the blind's open again. And then on one occasion, he moved all her shoes in the walk-in wardrobe. He'd lined them all up neatly from the heel to the baseboard, and rather than just being strewn about. And I asked him 2 questions, really. One, why was he moving my wife's personal items around the home? And he said because it was important that she understand that we are here, we are amongst you. And he also said, I think it's funny. I enjoy teasing her, showing his side as well. So,
That's
but
funny.
he said the serious side was to let us know that we are here, we are amongst you.
Like
So,
one family's poltergeist is another family's like Casper the Friendly Ghost. Hello, funny.
but they've taken it one step further now. I can't remember what the date was now. A while ago, I was trying to communicate with the group of 8 just before I got out of bed. It was about 8:30 in the morning, and I relaxed, opened my mind, and I wasn't able to connect with them. But I connected with a small craft that was flying by. It had 6 or 7 greys on it, and the guy that was piloting it, I've met him before. His name is Tia. And I asked why he was what was he doing around here? And he said, oh, we were close by, but we've come off our flight path. We wanted to see where you lived. Nothing unusual for me communicating in that way to other beings. Just happened to be passing by. So I finished the conversation, and I got dressed and went out onto the pool deck. My wife had already been up a while, made some tea and coffee. And she said, oh, you missed the most beautiful rainbow this morning. I said, oh, did you get a photograph of it? She said, yes. And we have 5 acres at the back, and the rainbow went from one fence line to the other, touching ground, a full 180 degrees.
Oh, wow.
She said, you'll never guess what happened next. I said, no. She said, oh, a UFO appeared under the rainbow. I said, did you get a photograph of it? She said, yes. And she showed me the photograph. But the thing was, when I looked at the time on the photograph, it was exactly the same time I was speaking to Tia in the small craft. So again, it was confirmation for myself with the telepathic communication, and it was confirmation for my wife that they are now showing her craft, So, and I couldn't do this work now without the support of my wife, because I'm going out speaking about these things, and many people think you're delusional or whatever, but my wife has her own contacts now, and she's comfortable with it. So, so it's nice when they integrate our families into this as well. So yeah, fascinating again.
Yeah, well, I think that's great, and I think it's probably happening for some people. They need the information maybe slower than others, so you don't dump it all on them at once, Otherwise, it might be rather shocking, I suppose. Or it could be anyway for some people.
I'm sure it could be, yes.
The question I wanted to ask you, and sorry, Lucinda, if I'm hogging the time, please just jump in. But I had a question about a lot of us in our Zero group are talking about October. I'm getting a lot of information about things coming together that are not exactly good things, and some of these things are already happening, series of calamities and so forth. And it's culminating supposedly in October. Do you get any information? Do you get any feeling about that? And then as a second, as a follow-up to that, is predicting stuff. I mean, it can be very precarious because there's so many variables. That's what Anzar tells me. There's too many variables. We can't tell you exactly, but what we can do is tell you where things are heading, and we can encourage you to prepare. That's what he said. What he said was, his wisdom was that predictions can often be wrong, but preparations are never wrong.
That's very profound, isn't it? Very
profound. Yeah, when you think about it. Yeah. So do you have any feelings for things, coming up, things that you could talk about? I know some things maybe our audience, it might be too much for them, but maybe not our audience. What do you think, Lucinda? I think we'd be fine. Who's listening?
I don't know. I just like, we always preface this with, it's kind of the running joke with the friends, which is, I'm not in the prediction business, but,
right. Yeah.
I don't have any predictions, Bruce. I can only share my personal feelings at the moment. I know that we are in a time of change. Our consciousness has been expanded. There are currently, I learned the other day, 1.3 billion people on our planet now who are having contact of some sort with the extraterrestrials, with the higher conscious beings. That's a huge portion of our society. Mm-hmm. And as I'm sure you're aware of that, consciousness expands, then we will be more and more people because we're speaking about it, but just the fact that where consciousness itself is expanding. And I see what's going on now as a conscious energy storm, and it's circling around where I am at the moment. I'm in the eye of the storm, and it will continue to circle around me. I don't know for how long until the storm abates, but storms do abate. And so I have no particular predictions. I know they are here. I know they want to meet with our government representatives. They know that they want to meet with them. They're not prepared to do that at this moment in time. So, but there is an open offer, open-ended offer to meet with our ambassadors here, with the ambassadors of the higher conscious beings, ETs, whatever you want to call them. And I know that another experiencer himself, Terry Lovelace, he gets similar information to myself. And we're all being connected now again. So something is already changing. Our society is changing. But I believe now that we can co-create with the ETs, higher conscious beings, a new society, a society that we desire for our children, a society for our future generations. And we will do that using shared consciousness, co-create that new reality. But before we're able to do that, there will be some change. And I don't know what all the changes will be, but I'm very confident for the future, very confident. We came together for the first time in our history, and I know you teach history, as a human species, as a global species. We all came together for a virus, one of the smallest things that lives on our planet. But we came together collective as one consciousness, and that in itself raised our vibrational frequency as a species. And the fact that we've got 1.3 million people sharing contact in different levels, but they're all sharing, they all understand now that we are in this shift of consciousness. So it will continue. And I say, I don't have any predictions, but I'm very confident for the future of humanity itself.
Oh, good. Okay. So there may be rough times ahead, but we're going to come out okay in the end.
If that's the prediction, I will go with that, Bruce.
Okay. We'll leave it on an upbeat note.
Yeah.
Well, I think we got to. I think we got to wrap it up. Unless Lucinda, you have another question for Kevin?
No. I want to end on a high.
Okay, I like that. I like that. That was really good. Well, I just want to say, Kevin, it's been a delight to meet you, and I hope we can keep our correspondence going now that Lucinda has kind of brought us together surreptitiously here and I think that's great. I'm glad. I didn't know we had so much in common. And I'm also very good friends with Terry Lovelace, just so you know. He's a really good guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he is. Amazing. Yes.
Yeah, he speaks highly of you, and he said to say hello to you. So I was.
Oh, really? That's very kind of him. He's such an amazing man. I met him for the first time last year at a conference. And again, we've got so much in common. And he's speaking out now, and he's booked the incident at Devil's Den. A fascinating true story, you know. So... I'd say it's just amazing that we're all being connected. And we will keep in touch, and I want to thank Lucinda for introducing us, and both of you for inviting me on your show. It's been a pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. And I think we have in our show page, we have your link, but could you say it too? How do people get a hold of you? I know there's a website.
I have a website, which is Kevin J, just the letter J, kevinjbriggs.com. You can put your emails in there, and I will respond to you, and then you'll have my personal email address, and you can communicate with me that way.
Okay. All right.
Well, there's some other interviews on there. There's a couple of channels. If you go onto the event and media section, there's some channels that I've done on there. So if any of your viewers are interested in channeling, they can have a look at those too, I think.
Okay. Well, I've looked at it a little bit, but I'm going to look at it more extensively now. Now that we've met.
Go ahead, well done. I want to say too, just to remind listeners that we have an email if anybody wants to write to us. What is it? What's our email address? It's Timeless Esoterica at yahoo.com.
Yeah, let me look it up real quick. Oh, Timeless Radio Show at yahoo.com.
We should put something on the our little show notes for this show on YouTube, and then there's a
Yeah.
Facebook page. Just find us, man. We're out there. We're easy. We're all over the place.
Yeah, you can find us. And so anyway, I'd like to close it out for the evening and thank all of our listeners. And I would like to thank, I always forget to thank Roland Bashura, who wrote the theme song for our show, a friend of mine, very talented musician. I'd like to thank our guest, Kevin Briggs, and thank my co-host, Lucinda Laughing Eagle, and our engineer, Jordan Martin, who made this visual possible. And of course, Scotty Z, our engineer and station manager, owner / everything in Ohio. So I'd like to say a pleasant good evening, good morning, wherever you are. And until next month, the 4th Tuesday of next month, we'll be back. And stay in the light and be the light, everybody.